you about Trump on that front, about the election, 2020 election, and maybe the better question is about January 6th. Do you think January 6th was a big deal?
I do.
How big of a deal?
What leftist does not think that January 6th was a big deal? So welcome back to the channel, guys. We are going to watch David Pakman get, subtly demolished by Lex Fridman when talking about January 6th. Of course, David Pakman will get unhinged about January 6th, because to this day, leftists still get so worked up over January 6th. And no matter how somebody like me might feel about the Trump administration, January 6th should have never went down the way it went down. A lot of innocent people went to jail for no reason. And leftists, they always tell you, oh my gosh, the biggest terrorists, and they should still be in jail. They did such horrible thing. What did they do? What really did they do? But this is David Pakman getting ready to get unhinged on the Lex Fridman show about January 6th. Let's get into it.
Compared to what?
Civil War.
So he's such a weasel. He's starting already.
I think it was less of a big deal than the Civil War.
Okay.
No, I mean, so it's a very interesting thing, though, right? Because we have not only the event. That's clever, actually. It's not only the event, but it's what led up to it, and what has happened since, and did it change what is considered on the table that citizens can, should, or might do if they disagree with the results of an election. So I think that there are further reaching consequences than just was the 6-hour period on January 6th a bigger or smaller deal than the Civil War. And there's so much wrapped up into it. Many conspiracy theories flowed from January 6th as well. 60 Minutes recently featured a guy named Ray Epps, who was targeted by some on the right, claiming that he was an instigator or an agent of the FBI or something along those lines. There were people claiming that it was like a no true Scotsman sort of thing. Like, Trump supporters wouldn't riot, so by definition, it must have been Antifa. Police let him in, or police were, all these different things. I think it was a big deal in a lot.
Police let him in. Let me tell you something. To this day, and you can't find the clip anywhere because they scrubbed YouTube after January 6th. January 6th, I don't know what the plan was with that, but I'll tell you this. There was a long time where you couldn't even talk about it on YouTube. This is when I was first starting YouTube. To this day, I remember, I'll never forget it, when people were running in and the cops were doing this, okay? Now, this to me is the universal sign for come on up. Come on in, okay? That's what it is to me. And I remember when I was watching it, I was like, why are they telling? I was like, wow, they're telling them to come on in. I was like, dang, I said, these cops must love Trump. That was my thought, okay, when I saw that. Because I'm like, why are the cops telling the people to come in? Because it was a lot going on. So for them to say come in, I just thought to myself, like, oh, these people must love Donald Trump. I didn't know that the cops love Trump so much. I mean, I guess it makes sense because I was kind of late coming into, I did vote for Trump in 2020. And so I definitely, to this day, will tell you that 2020 was stolen and I don't care. But so, that's not a conspiracy. We know what we saw. Those of us who know, we know what we saw.
Lot of ways, because it completely made us have to go back to the top to say, okay, what are the parameters of valid discussion and activism in the United States?
But what aspect of the January 6th was bad for you?
Well, I mean,
like, if you're thinking it from a big philosophical, political perspective, so presumably the number of people hurt and the number of people who died is not the only metric to consider here.
Absolutely. I think the sum total of what it means about how the United States operates is what's most concerning, and I'll kind of just flesh it out a little bit. So, summer of 2020, Trump's already saying they're going to cheat. Now, the polling is close, but it shows that Biden's in a good position. People aren't happy with Trump. Any reasonable person would look and say, it's going to be close, but Biden certainly, it wouldn't be a crazy thing if Biden won. Trump's already saying they're going to cheat with mail-in ballots, or they're going to cheat with early voting, or they're going to cheat with machines, or we should do only in person, or whatever else the case may be.
Yeah, I mean,
we have the election. We knew in certain states how the vote count was going to go. Some states stop counting at 10 p.m. Some states count all of the mail-in stuff up front. Some don't. Everything was completely predictable. At 2 a.m., Trump comes out and says, I won. Okay, but where are you getting that, sir? As he claims people always refer to him. Where are you getting that? And with that statement, immediately we see that there is a large portion of this country that either is unable or unwilling to say, wait a second, the polling all said this was a real possibility. The counting schedules are all being adhered to. But Trump won? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't happen. It builds. People are donating millions to Trump for supposed audits, which nobody can define, and lawsuits, which go nowhere. And it builds and builds and builds. And we have a total separation from a factual reality.
No, you will not weasel your way and out of reality and tell us that we're the ones who aren't real. Listen, let me tell you something, okay? I'm old enough to remember when, yes, they used to call elections at 2:00 and say that I won, when they went through all the numbers and everything and said that I won. Now, when Trump said, because I saw it too, I was like, this is going to be a mess. When they said that mail-in ballots, and by the way, Pennsylvania to this day still votes against its constitution, because we're not supposed to have no excuse mail-in ballot. We've never fixed that in the Constitution, right? Anyway, so when all of this happens, you know what I mean? Like, all this stuff, it was a mess. So we already knew, because he's saying, oh, Trump was saying that they're gonna rig it or whatever because of the mail-in ballots. He was already saying it. Yeah, anybody but a blind man in New Jersey, could see that was gonna happen. This was not some weird thought process, okay? Like, at all, right? Especially if you've been watching elections for at least, like, how many elections, okay? They were still having issues with, like, a New York election around that time that was done, like, way before the main election, that was done with all the mail-in ballots, and it was a mess. All right, so don't act like, and then why did they stop counting? I had never heard of, okay, we're just going to stop counting now. Never in my life. The first time Trump won, we figured out by like 3:00 in the morning or something, 4:00 that he won? Something like that. It had to be earlier than that, because I woke up at 5 to go to work, and then I realized that Trump won. So don't make it seem like, oh, well, they were with the counting schedule. There's no counting schedule. You're supposed to count. Then all of a sudden it was just bags and bags of, like, mail-in ballot, and you could just see this mess was getting. They let us see, like, and again, it don't act like, again, this stuff hasn't happened. Once again, because the Democrats were all up on Al Gore. Okay? Remember that? Please.
There's no reason to think by December 1st, right? Give 3 weeks to look through some of this stuff. By December 1st, there's no reasonable case to be made that Trump actually won. But it doesn't end there. It goes into, maybe we can just, like, send different electors. Even though Biden won Arizona, let's just, like, send, I don't remember how many electors it is in Arizona. Let's just, like, send Republican electors to say, we vote for Trump. But that's not democracy. That's not the way the system works. Let's make sure we're ready. Ready for what exactly? And then it builds to, maybe Mike Pence can just, like, prevent Biden from being president, or maybe we can just interfere in this other way. And then it gets to, let's break into the Capitol.
Oh, get out of here.
It's the height of saying we no longer comport ourselves attached to what is a verifiable factual reality. And when we no longer do that, we're also willing to commit crimes, property crimes, violent crimes, okay, different degrees, in order to try to have something other than democracy. It wouldn't be democracy if any of those things had happened.
Yeah, I think it's not the height of it. I think there's still a case to be made that did not leave the realm of protest versus a violation of the principles of democracy. So to me, the height of what could happen on January 6th is if Donald Trump was much better executive, he could take control of the military.
If it had succeeded.
No, not even succeeded. The attempt would have been more empowered.
I understand.
So, like, the way not to bring up Hitler every other word, which is something your subreddit also told me not to do. Okay. He's kind of an important figure. It's interesting to study that moment in history because it reveals so much about human nature.
Oh, it is so interesting to study that moment in history more than you guys even understand. Okay.
And that all of us are capable of good and evil. But thank you, dear subredditor or redditor, for your contribution to the conversation. I will keep bringing up Hitler and the Third Reich, and I'll keep bringing up Stalin. There's so much to learn from that. Anyway, an effective practiced authoritarian could roll the tanks out into the city streets to establish order, and in so doing, pause the process of democracy, as opposed to a few protesters breaking in to a questionably protected building.
I agree that what you're saying would be worse. I don't want to use it to minimize what the protesters were intent on doing. They failed, fortunately.
Oh, but if to you the intention was there.
The intention was Trump should remain president. That's the intention. And to what lengths they would have been willing to go if by the early evening, they were sort of like forced out. I don't know. I agree with you that Trump trying to use the military would absolutely be worse. There's these reports that he tried to seize voting machines, which is kind of funny because it's like, once you get the machine at Mar-a-Lago, what do you do with it exactly? I don't know. There's a comedic element.
Yeah, I don't know why you're even bringing that up because that has nothing to do. It's like these people cannot just say, that they're wrong or whatever. They still have to find a way to make it seem like Trump was so bad around that time. Listen, there are people who say, he still hasn't conceded the election, which he did end up doing later on an Elk Boys talking about buy a whisker, which was really disappointing to me for me to hear that. But anyway, that's a different story. But David Pakman is sitting here acting like, again, that all of this was made up. I remember that time, lawsuits that didn't go anywhere. You know why they didn't go anywhere? Because the judges didn't even look at them. They were tossing out the lawsuits before even looking at them. And then in Pennsylvania, there was a judge who said, don't certify this election because it has been done against our Constitution. It was invalid almost. And then another judge came and superseded that judge. The person, too, who did not make the change, people in Pennsylvania aware of the changes that was happening with no excuse mail-in ballot, that person got fired for that. But I remember Governor Tom Wolf at the time was like, but this has nothing to do with elections. Don't bring up election stuff, blah, blah, blah. Like, hey, man, please. I remember the behavior of Democrats, okay? Now, and let me just end with this. What happened on January 6th showed that if people come together about something, about actually saving their country, that things can be done. And they didn't like what they saw, all right? And so at the end of the day, I hope that the spirit of 1776 has not gone away from this country completely because we're going to need it again. I'll leave it with that.